Hello and welcome back to Southwest London Alive. I am Rory McNair and we are talking all things Super Bowl 55. I'm joined by the delightful Andrew Gamble. How are you doing, Andrew?
I'm good, man. I'm very good. I'm excited for the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Also joined by Rams fan Tom Masters. How you doing, Tom?
Very well, thanks. Very excited for Sunday night.
We have Jack Bantock in the Ezekiel Elliott jersey. How you doing, Jack?
Great to be here, Rory. Thank you.
And to finish us off, we have the neutral NFL fan. No Jags clothing from you today, Matt. Matt Hancock, Bruce.
No Jags. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
So obviously looking at the Super Bowl on Sunday, a lot of the attention is on Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, but we thought today we'd look at some of the underrated matchups in this game, looking at the kind of matchups between players on the field, also chucking in some fun facts for you as well. So to start us off, we have Jack Bantock talking about the coaches. I'll hand over to you, Jack.
Excellent place to start. So it's a fascinating matchup between the two coaches we have coming up. On the Chiefs side of Andy Reid, and on the Bucs side, there's Bruce Arians. Now, there's so much history, obviously, ahead of this Super Bowl. The Bucs playing the first home Super Bowl ever. The fact it's the lowest attended Super Bowl, sadly, due to coronavirus. And, I mean, Brady's basically a walking piece of history in himself. But, yes, more history is that Reid and Arians will be the oldest coaches to take part in the Super Bowl, with a combined age of 131 years and 86 days. And I'll throw Brady in there, it's probably close to 200. Reid is the younger of the pair at 62, while Arians is at 68. And should he win, he would be the oldest coach to win the Super Bowl. So we'll start on the Chiefs side with Andy Reid. It was just over a year ago, and it's quite funny to look back at articles where people were criticising Reid for his playoffs record, having been to the playoffs 13 times and never won the Super Bowl. And he's now on Sunday with the prospect of going back-to-back should the Chiefs win. His sort of father figure approach, sort of hand around the shoulder, never publicly criticised his players after defeats, which I guess is quite easy. You don't lose very often. Whereas Arians is a more sort of tough love, critical sort of coach. Brady said as much this season. But despite that sort of father figure approach, Reid has shown his ability to make big calls. The one sort of that comes to mind is in the end of the Browns playoff game where I think Holmes had gone off injured due to concussion, and they had a fourth down with a very slender lead. Most people thought they were going to punt, but Reid called a pass, and then they passed to Tyreek Hill, got the first down, and that won them the game. And speaking of risk-taking strategies, Bruce Arians' catchphrase is "No risk it, no biscuit." And so here's a great story. He took the 2018 season off after 5 years at the Cardinals. He said he'd only go back into coaching if he had the perfect job. And I think he's found that in Tampa. He's effectively been allowed to handcraft his coaching team. He took 12 coaches from the Cardinals with him to Tampa. He said he would not have taken the job at all if it wasn't for offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich, who effectively calls all the plays. So he said he didn't want to call any of the plays, Bruce Arians. So that's given him more of a free role to do other things, act as more like a CEO type figure. Proving quite good for his, he said, quite good for his mood too. Apparently he's been a much calmer coach this year, been able to focus on his health, spend more time with his family. He's a 3-time cancer survivor, so it's obviously very important for him. So to have that downtime. And he's really changed the culture of the club. They had a terrible start when he joined. I think they went 3-6 in his first 9 games. And since then, they've gone 18-8. Which is sort of reflective of the comeback they've had since playing the Chiefs in the season in November. They lost that game 27-24. And I think the real sort of where the game we won and lost on Sunday will be which team sort of learned their lessons the best from that game. I think the Bucs found themselves 17 down in the first quarter, 17-0 down, but they actually ended the game quite strongly. So I think if they can replicate that, come Sunday, they'll be in a good spot. But also, yeah, a lot of the build-up is going to focus on Brady and Mahomes. That's kind of to be expected given the context. But I think it's just as intriguing on the sideline as it will be between the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there, Jack, especially looking at the coaches. And when it comes to kind of NFL dynasties, kind of a coach having such a big impact on a team, not just as a team, but as a franchise, whether you see that with the Chiefs, what they're doing this year and last year, or you see it with Brady, you see it with Arians as like this kind of quarterback whisperer. Andy, how much of an impact can a coach really have on turning a team into a dynasty?
I think it's very important for the coach to. The coach obviously is a big role in what generates a team's success, and it's actually quite interesting because obviously Tom Brady left my Patriots. I mean, he's the man for me, but he obviously left New England last summer, and people have always been saying for years now they've been, was it Tom Brady, was it Bill Belichick that sort of powered the dynasty? And I guess Tom Brady sort of landing the first blow in that regard. But I mean, to me, it is it's very much an even sort of share of the results. Like, I think Tom Brady is obviously a pivotal part, but as we've spoken about, as Jack spoke about, Andy Reid is a great play caller. It's going to be a really interesting battle on the sidelines on Sunday.
Awesome. Yeah. So after that first matchup, we move to our first fact of the day. Take it away, Tom Masters.
Yes, so the Buccaneers, they're making history in Super Bowl 55 as the first team to play a Super Bowl in their own stadium. Super Bowl 55 taking place at the Raymond James Stadium, which also hosted Super Bowls 35 and 43. And as a Rams fan, this is potentially a brilliant omen as Super Bowl 56 is being held at the SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles.
Wow. Well, we are all praying for you and your Rams, Tom. So heading into the second matchup of today's live stream, we have Matt Hancock-Bruce telling us a bit about the Chiefs wide receiver core. Take it away, Matt.
Yes. So for me, there is just one clear key battle on the field this Sunday. And that is, as you say, the Kansas wide receivers versus the Tampa defensive backs. And when I say the Kansas wide receivers, everyone knows who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Tyreek Hill. So as Jack did to the regular season game matchup between the two sides, Tyreek Hill just tore them to shreds. He was by far the player of the game, probably his game of the season. 3 touchdowns, all coming in the first half, along with 269 yards, which is over a fifth of his regular season total yards. So, yeah, as I say, game of the season for him. And if you needed any demonstration of just how easy this game was for him, he scored his second touchdown by backflipping into the end zone. So, yeah, no reason to doubt that he'll be a big factor on Sunday. Elsewhere along the season, he had 17 touchdowns, which was second in the league for receivers. But there is a downside to his game, and that is that he has not yet scored in the postseason. So 3 games so far, hasn't scored yet. What better time to score than on the big stage? As I say, he will be the focal point, having had almost double the receptions of any other wide receiver on the Kansas City Chiefs team. But there's another man I'm going to give a little mention to, and that is Mecole Hardman. Anyone who watched the championship game with Green Bay will probably remember his name. Fumbling the ball from a kick return in the first quarter, which allowed Green Bay to get their first touchdown. But he redeemed himself. Was only involved twice more after that, getting a 4-yard reception, which allowed him to get a touchdown to bring Kansas back into the game. Not long after that, he got a 50-yard run, which was a crucial play as well. So, he could be a usable player, but the odds are we're going to see Tyreek used over and over again in this game. Looking defensively at Tampa, it's probably the weaker side of their defense. Everyone knows what their rushing game's like, but on terms of their cornerbacks, the man who was trying to guard Tyreek Hill in that game was Carlton Davis, and he had 3 touchdowns. He had a bit of a mare that afternoon, but 4 interceptions in the regular season. Hasn't done a lot in terms of interceptions in the postseason. Still some, an average, a pretty solid player for them. But the guy I think could be key this Sunday in controlling Tyreek Hill will be Sean Murphy-Bunting. So 3 interceptions already in the postseason, 1 in each of the games. That's going to be key. If he can keep that form going and he can keep Tyreek under control, then maybe that's their way in. It will be interesting to see if they decide to double up on him using one of the safeties, maybe Antoine Winfield Jr., to kind of double up on him, contain him as much as you can. Obviously, that isn't to say he's their only offensive weapon, but he will be a big part of it. And yeah, as I say, I think it'll be very interesting to see what they do to try and contain him.
Well, yeah, they've certainly got a lot of offensive firepower on that Chiefs team. Jack, I know you're a big fan of Tyreek Hill. How do you see him matching up in this game?
Indeed. Yeah, I thought it was interesting what Matt said, because he made a very explosive start to that game, but he sort of tailed off as it went on. And I think after the game, he did say he was tired of running, which is very relatable in itself. But I think it does go to show that once they sort of not figured him out, but I think as the game went on and the Bucks defense sort of found their rhythm, they actually did quite a good job against him. Kind of a weird paradox. He had such a good game, but then ended sort of quite quietly. And even he said after he was very impressed with the Bucks defense and how well they're organized. So I think if they have learned any lessons from that game and they can start better than they did, especially if Brady improves as the game goes on, they're in a pretty good spot because they did a good job on him for the rest of the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think looking at this game, you're expecting those Bucks players in the secondary to have a lot of stuff on their hands and a lot of things in front of them to keep an eye on. Andrew, how difficult do you think it's going to be for them to manage the entire game?
I think, and it's really important that we mentioned sort of Antoine Winfield Jr., the Tampa Bay safety, because Kansas City, they have this formation where they line up with three on one side. It's called trips formation, and they basically have Travis Kelce on the inside, Tyreek Hill in the middle, and then on the outside they have Sammy Watkins. And I think it's almost, there's some ridiculous stat where it's like more often than not, no matter where they are on the field, if Tyreek Hill is in single coverage against the defender, the Kansas City score. If Patrick Mahomes connects with him, that's a touchdown, whether it's 30 yards, 40 yards, 70 yards. I think they had one earlier in the season. So it's going to be really important for people like Antoine Winfield Jr. and Jordan Whitehead to make sure that they are not just covering Tyreek Hill by themselves. They need the help to make sure that they can sort of keep the short plays and make sure that they aren't beaten long.
Yeah, certainly another fascinating matchup for Sunday. Give us your second fact of the day, Tom.
This is one for the gamers. I don't know how many of you are a fan of Madden, but all four of the cover stars from EA Sports Madden from 2017 to 2020 are featuring in Super Bowl 55. We have Rob Gronkowski from 2017, Tom Brady from 2018, and Antonio Brown from 2019, all playing for the Bucks. And Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, who's the only one still at the same team as when he was on the cover, was the face of Madden 20.
Wonderful. Now, leading on from what Matt has been taking us through with the Chiefs offense, Tom, you're going to tell us a bit about Travis Kelce, and his matchup at the weekend.
Yeah, so the regular season game between these two showed just how dangerous the Chiefs offense can be. And as Matt has already alluded to, Tyreek Hill was in fine form with his 3 touchdowns in that game and over 250 yards. But the Chiefs had many more strings to their bow than just Mahomes throwing to Hill, as tight end Kelce as a first-team All-Pro in his own right. And he's in imperious form. He's got 3 touchdowns in his 2 postseason games against the Browns and the Bills, and then 11 others in the regular season as well. And Mahomes has used him in various ways recently, not just deploying him as the more sort of traditional big target that we've become accustomed to with tight ends in the NFL, but he's also been used as a running back almost from sort of close range with the underarm throw of Mahomes, which worked really well for a touchdown against the Bills, and we've seen it a few times throughout the season as well with other touchdowns. So there are plenty of ways to use Travis Kelce. And in that regular season game, Mahomes and Kelce combined 8 times for 82 yards with the longest completion of 20 yards, which is obviously a solid game, but it's nowhere near Kelce's best game of the season in terms of numbers. And it was one of only 5 games where he didn't end up in the end zone. So I think that shows us 2 things, really. One, that Kelce is a real threat, and that if you don't get hold of him early or even later on in the game, he can cause serious damage like he did against the Bills in that AFC Championship game. But also that the Bucks linebackers, and in particular Lavonte David, actually managed to control Kelce fairly well in that regular season matchup. So shows us that this is, again, another important matchup in the game, and that Kelce is such a vital outlet for the Chiefs offense, and that stopping him is something that actually very few teams have been able to do throughout the season. The fact that David was able to prevent Kelce from reaching the 100-yard mark, which he's done in 11 of the 14 games where he's had 8 receptions or more, is impressive in itself. And that game against the Bucks was actually the last game that Kelce didn't score a touchdown, and that was all the way back in November. So that shows the form he's in and how important he is to that Chiefs offense. But then if you add in Devin White, who's grown into one of the best inside linebackers in the game, add him to the equation, and the matchup of those Bucks linebackers against Kelce once again becomes another sort of, I guess, mouth-watering matchup in Super Bowl 55. And you feel that if White and David can do a job on Kelce, prevent him from getting in the end zone again on Sunday, then I think you can say they would have done their job well and probably added quite a bit more pressure onto the shoulders of Patrick Mahomes. And I was going to ask Rory a question about this, because obviously you're a tight end yourself. Maybe better than Travis Kelce, who knows? But how crucial do you see Kelce to this Chiefs offense?
No, it does create a really interesting matchup, I think, because having such a versatile tight end can really open up an offense's playbook. And Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy having Travis Kelce as that kind of Swiss Army knife in the offense, like you said, not just playing as a tight end, but blocking, going out wide, kind of coming in as a running back, taking handoffs. There's so many options and creates so many problems for a defense. And their scheme, Todd Bowles' defensive scheme, is going to have to be really on point to kind of neutralize Travis Kelce. Andrew, I know you're a massive Devin White fan. How do you think, as a kind of linebacking core, the Bucs are going to handle Travis Kelce?
I mean, I think Tom covered it really. I think I love me some Devin White. As you guys know, I think he's a fantastic player. He's in his second season in the NFL, and his game is just unbelievable. You know, as Tom alluded to, he improved over the back end of the season to become perhaps maybe, you know, in the conversation for being the best inside linebacker in the league, which is an incredible rise for him. He's an unbelievable player. He'll cover every blade of grass on Sunday. He's going to help in the passing game. He'll help neutralize Travis Kelce. I think Levante David will have the chief role in that. But I think Devin White will definitely help out. But he can do it all, man. He can sack the quarterback. He can stop the run game. He's going to be everywhere. I think he'll be a vital, almost like the quarterback of the defense for the Bucs on Sunday.
Fantastic. And then heading back to you, Tom, for our third fact of the day. Give it to us.
Yeah, this is probably one that Andy will enjoy as a Patriots and a Brady fan. He's now 43. And he's playing in his third Super Bowl since turning 40, and no other quarterback has ever made it this far in their 40s. But he's also vying to become only the second quarterback to win at multiple franchises, as Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl at both the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Broncos. So plenty of history, not only being broken, but could also be broken again on Sunday for Brady.
Well, that fact is certainly going to put a smile on Andrew Gamble's face. But Andrew, tell us about the matchup you've been looking at this week. It's the Chiefs' offensive line.
Yeah, man. I mean, I could listen to Tom whisper sweet nothings into my ear about Tom Brady all day long. But let's be real. Let's talk about the Chiefs' offensive line against that Bucs front seven. I think that battle in the trenches could really go some way in deciding who lifts the Lombardi Trophy on Sunday. In the red corner, right, we've got the Chiefs. They'll be wearing their famous red home jerseys. And it's going to be their banged up offensive line, right? So they are missing two of their biggest stars. So it's going to be two-time Pro Bowl left tackle Eric Fisher. He was the first pick in the 2013 NFL draft. He's out. He tore his Achilles tendon in the AFC Championship game, and Fisher is joining a former All-Pro right tackle, Mitchell Schwartz, on the sideline. Schwartz has basically been absent since week 6, and what this all means is that the Chiefs' offensive line are missing their two biggest and brightest stars on the biggest event in American football. And then you look at the other side of the battle, right? Looking in the white corner is Tampa Bay's outside linebackers and defensive line. This unit helped the Buccaneers to 48 total sacks during the regular season, which was the fourth highest total in the league. Bruce Arians' defense, basically it's anchored by Jason Pierre-Paul. He's a veteran leader on the team. He led the team with 9.5 sacks, while outside linebacker Shaquille Barrett registered 8. He actually led the league, Barrett, in sacks in 2019. So everyone knows a lot about what Shaquille Barrett can do. The Bucs also generate immense inside pressure through players like Ndamukong Suh. He registered 6 sacks and 19 quarterback hits himself. And Vita Vea, who got 2 sacks on the year this season. He's actually back in the mix after breaking his ankle earlier in the campaign. He incredibly recovered in just 108 days to return for the NFC Championship win at Lambeau against the Green Bay Packers. Well, as Tom discussed, inside linebacker Devin White, he can certainly cover players, and he'll be a tremendous asset to stopping that Travis Kelce and Chiefs aerial attack. He's also a threat in the blitz. The sophomore, who was selected 5th overall in the 2019 NFL draft, he recorded 9 sacks this season. So you bet he can do it all. But I mean, looking at the whole defensive front, I think the onus has to be on Barrett and Pierre-Paul. In fact, speaking earlier in Super Bowl Media Week about the Chiefs' sort of weakened defensive line, outside linebacker Pierre-Paul, he basically said, I don't care if they have 3 offensive linemen, they better send 2 or 3 to block me. I'm going to do what I need to do. Well, he's talking the talk, but JPP also walked the walk in the NFC title game. He shared 5 sacks with Barrett, including several crucial ones late in the game to secure the win against Aaron Rodgers. I think this battle in the trenches between the Chiefs' offensive line and the Bucs rushers is perhaps the matchup to watch going into Super Bowl 55. Rory, I mean, for you, how crucial is it for the Bucs defensive line to get in the face of Mahomes right from the off?
I think it is going to be a massive talking point, especially looking at how the Chiefs offense are going to have to adjust their entire game. I think it's going to be a whole week of Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid looking at their playbook and looking at how they can maybe go to look for more kind of quick passes, get the ball out of Mahomes' hands as quickly as possible, running down the gut. I think they're the best options for that offense, but whether the Bucks can keep up that pressure is going to be really interesting. But Matt, you were talking about you had a look at the receiving core for the Kansas City Chiefs. How realistic do you think it is that they can incorporate that quick passing into their game?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is they are relying on those big passes. And if the defensive core of Tampa can control Mahomes and lock him down, then they're going to have a real tough afternoon. Obviously, in the championship game, they managed to get 6 sacks on Aaron Rodgers, as Andy said. And once you take Rodgers out of the game, that takes Green Bay out of the game. If you can take Mahomes out of the game, that will be a huge part of it. And I was also going to mention that, like, if you take the passing out of the game, their rushing side for Kansas isn't their strongest effort. They'd be relying on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a rookie. Has a lot to put on his shoulders. And when you look at the guys he's going to have to try and get past, they've allowed the least amount of rushing yards. I think it's about 1,200 across the regular season. It's not really an option, I don't think, the rushing game in this. They are, Kansas are going to come at you blazing with the passes, over 5,000 yards in the regular season that way, leading the league. Yeah. So if they can control Mahomes, it'll be very interesting, but that's a tough job for anyone to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think that offensive line is going to be something to watch at the weekend because they kind of make or break the game for the Chiefs. Let's head back to Tom for our fourth fact of the day.
Yeah, and we're staying on the theme of certain Mr. Tom Brady. His return to the Super Bowl this year means it is the first time in NFL history that 2 previous Super Bowl winning quarterbacks will play against each other. Mahomes was victorious last year, obviously in Super Bowl 54, defeating the San Francisco 49ers 31-20, whilst Brady won his 6th Super Bowl ring in Super Bowl 53, defeating the LA Rams in a classic 13-3 win while still at the Patriots.
Awesome. Well, to round us off, I will be looking at the matchup of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers running backs against that Chiefs defense. And it's quite an interesting one looking at it, I think, because when you look at how the Bucs have used their running backs this year, they haven't needed to rely on them in games to kind of get them through games because of the efficiency of Tom Brady and his receivers, obviously with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. But looking back to that Week 12 matchup with the Chiefs, obviously Ronald Jones had 9 carries for 66 yards. Leonard Fournette had 3 carries for 10 yards. These aren't huge numbers. We're kind of looking at guys who you can bring in to keep the train rolling, but they're not guys who set the pace for the game. They were used a lot more kind of in pass protection, giving Tom Brady time. And they were kind of sent out on screens, maybe check downs if Tom Brady runs out of options. And when he needed them, they came up big. I mean, Ronald Jones, that one reception he got out of the backfield, took it 37 yards for a touchdown. So I think that really shows that if Bruce Arians decides that he wants to kind of lean on the running backs, give them a shot every now and then, they can come up big for him and they can put points on the board. But then obviously, those few runs they did break during the game came when Kansas City blitzed. So if there is that pressure we've talked about of that Kansas City defense, maybe Arians will lean on the running backs and do a bit more with them through the trenches. Obviously, after Week 12, things kind of got better for that Bucs running core. As Brady kind of settled into the season, he maybe found that once momentum was going, he could rely on handing the ball off and kind of having several options to spread the defense out and not have them focusing on him and his receivers. And they did well against good running defenses. I mean, Fournette had 49 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Falcons. And the Falcons have a pretty good rushing defense. The next week, Fournette had 34 yards and a touchdown against the Lions. And the week after that, Ronald Jones had 78 yards and a touchdown against the Falcons once again. So we're looking at kind of going into the playoffs, how effective those running backs have been in dictating the pace of a game. And then obviously with Leonard Fournette, he's kind of gained this moniker of Playoff Lenny. And the success he's found in the playoffs is kind of hard to ignore. Obviously in that first game in the divisional round, he got 93 yards and a touchdown versus, sorry, not the divisional round, the wildcard round, 93 yards and a touchdown versus Washington. In the divisional, he had 63 rushing yards, 44 receiving yards, and a touchdown against the Saints. And then obviously against the Packers, 55 yards and a touchdown. So he's been doing really well, and he's really earned that name of Playoff Lenny. But we are all hoping he will become Super Bowl Lenny on Sunday, put that cherry on the top of the season for the Buccaneers. And I think it's quite realistic. When you look at the Chiefs' rushing defense, it's not great. It's kind of middle of the pack for the NFL. The Chiefs have only caused 5 fumbles this year from running backs, and the Bucs themselves have only accounted for 3 fumbles in their rushing game. So as long as they can protect the ball, mix things up with Brady passing and handing it off, I think they've got a real good chance of Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones kind of having those short and sweet plays where they get their chance, they make it downfield, they put up big gains and hopefully big scores. But I kind of taking it back to the group, I'd love to ask you, Andy, how much do you think the Chiefs defense, players like Alex Okafor, players like Chris Jones, are going to be able to control the Bucs running back core?
I think it's a really interesting sort of narrative heading into the game. As you mentioned, playoff Lenny, Leonard Fournette finding form at the right moment in the season. It's going to be really interesting to watch as well, because we all know, Tom Brady, he's the man, he's the GOAT. He's been to 9 Super Bowls before this, right? But I mean, saying that out loud sounds absolutely insane. But in his 9 Super Bowls before that, he's only put up 3 points in the first quarter, which is absolutely insane, right? Like for the guy that is dubbed the greatest of all time, 3 points first quarter isn't necessarily, doesn't exactly inspire fear in the opponents. So Tom Brady likes to lean on that run game. We've seen it through this playoff run. It's going to be really important. If the Chiefs can slow it down, players like Okafor, players like Chris Jones, I think Chris Jones is going to be very important come Sunday. And I think if they can slow that run game down, it means Tom Brady has to find his feet and has to grow into the game at a faster rate, which usually means that he could be forced into making errors. But the thing is, if they lean on that run game and it goes all the way to the end, and it's a tight game in the late third or early fourth quarter, it's going to be difficult to knock back Tom Brady, the GOAT and the Bucs.
It's certainly going to be interesting to see how momentum swings in this game. But Tom, give us your 5th and final fact of the Super Bowl 55.
Well, Rory, this one's almost more of a sort of form statistic than a fact itself. But the Bucs, they are 5-3 this season at the Raymond James Stadium, and actually since that defeat against the Chiefs in Week 12 of the regular season, they've gone 7-0. So obviously in incredible form. As for the Chiefs, well, they're 8-0 on the road this season. So if they are to lose on Super Bowl Sunday, it will be their first loss on the road of the whole season.
It's certainly all adding up to provide us with a fascinating matchup for the game. Andy, how do you see this game swinging on Sunday by the time the final whistle blows?
Oh man, it's a really hard one to sort of to predict, to be honest, because my brain is telling me. We actually spoke about this the other day. My brain is telling me that I got to go Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I think he's too talented. And I usually, it's a team game. There's no other sport like it in terms of that regard. But also the quarterback is so important, and Patrick Mahomes is so unbelievably talented that I want to go with the Chiefs. But you don't want to bet against Tom Brady, man, especially in these big moments. So it's up in the air. I'm going to go Chiefs, but I'd be happily proven wrong.
It's certainly going to be interesting. I personally think the Bucs are going to pull off something fantastic and come away with that Super Bowl win. Thank you so much for coming here, you guys. Thank you for everyone who tuned into the stream. I will sign off, and each of you, if you give me your predicted Super Bowl winner, that would be perfect. Andy, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, man, it was great to be on the Southwest London podcast. It's been live. There you go, sports live show. It's been fantastic, and yeah, I'm going to go Chiefs on Sunday. Thank you so much, Tom Masters. Yeah, again, it's been wonderful. I hope you've enjoyed the facts and other trivial information for Sunday. I think it's going to be very close, but I'm going to go Chiefs. Lovely. Thank you, Jack Bantock in the Cowboys jersey. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm going to stick with the cover star. I'm going Chiefs and Mahomes. And finally, Matt Hancock. Bruce, thank you so much. Who are you going with? Yeah, bring on Sunday. Can't wait now. Without wanting to sound like a broken record, I'm going to go with the Chiefs as well. Lovely. Thank you very much.